In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use text and text effects in a Photoshop image. So in this case, I've got a finished example where we have an image with a mountain biker, largely in silhouette, in which I've applied some different texts to. One text is the title, the subtitle, and another text is sort of a slogan or an advertising jingle at the bottom. So all these things need to fit together in the same course and idea. So let's look at some of the things we're going to use. We're going to use the type tool. We're going to use layer effects, and layer effects are used in the layers panel specifically. Layer opacity and fill opacity. So let's get started and start putting text in place using the text tool. Now, most of the time you're going to have your default starting font is going to be something like Arial. So we're going to start with Arial, add a standard size font, which is often about 10 point. And if I click and drag with my text tool, it's going to make an empty area, and that's going to be a box that my text is going to live inside of. So the first thing I'll do is type my text. Now I don't even know if you can see the text up there, but I've got some little tiny letters, and if they're too small I can select the text by clicking and dragging, and I want to make this big and legible. Now that's very boring. What I want is some interesting text, and it should match the style of my image. For example, one thing I would not use on this is I would not put this style of a font to match with this activity. It needs to match in concept and style and energy. So I'm going to choose something fun and interesting like this one, and if I want to just capitalize, take the capital first letters and make them bigger, I can do that. So I just choose individual pieces of text and make them bigger so it looks a little bit better. I can center it. Now there's other things I can do with my text to add some detail and interest to it. So I'll open up my window menu and I'm going to choose character. Now these choices are going to allow me to spread my text apart a bit more. That's the spacing between the letters. And I have horizontal scale. Not really what I wanted, but nice to know what the options are. So let's unspace this a bit more. This one's vertical scale, and there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and use this one as a copy to create my next text. So I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift. Now this is going to have some less important text in it, so I'm going to make this one smaller. So I'm going to choose the text tool again with that one selected. Now I've got layers over here with my text in it. I'm going to set this one up at about 30, and I'm going to right justify it so now it looks like this. Of course, that's not the text I want. I don't want the same thing twice. Always important to double spell check your work. So I'm going to say at Hollister Hills. I feel like that's too big, so I'm going to go in here and choose 24 point. And that'll work just fine. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have a different style of font on the right side to put in my slogan. Now this one, as I said, I want to use a different font, so I'm going to select it, and I'm going to choose Black Oak Standard. And if I drag these handles, I can format where the breaks will go. Now as you can see, that caused one of the words to break, so I need to be paying attention to the words breaking. And I can make this fit right there. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit. So I'm going to knock that down to about 18 or 20, maybe 22. I can text in the number I want. And I want to continue to work on this until it has exactly the look I want. Next, we're going to work with some layer effects to create what we call stressed lettering, where it looks kind of beat up and stretched. So when you're out mountain biking, sometimes you get a little beat up out there, falling off your bike, so we're going to add some effects to make it look that way. So I'm going to add a layer mask, and as you can see, I just added that to the layer that I had selected. In fact, that's not where I wanted that. Undo. I want to work with my main title, Hudner Ranch. So layer mask there. So what I'll do is I'm going to take my brush tool. I'm going to get a nice dotted looking brush, starting with something larger. I can drag that up, and I'm going to use this to just, not too hard, I'm going to drag down my opacity a little bit, and this is going to maybe use a smaller size. This is just going to beat up my letters a little bit. Look like they got run through the wash with too much bleach. drag down the road, just like this. Now if I zoom in on that, I want to see what that did. Let's take a look. Okay, that looks good. It looks a little bit hammered. What I'm going to do to it though is I'm going to take the filter menu and use Smart Sharpen. Smart Sharpen lets me control the sharpening effect, and as you can see what it did, if we turn off the preview, turn on the preview, you can see the difference between what it looked like before and after. So I can actually work with my sharpening on how much, and I usually go to the extremes to see how much difference it's making. And the radius is going to control more about the look. So when I click OK, that's how it looks. Now that's still not very exciting, so what I'm going to do is add some layer effects to it using the effects menu, layer styles. I can use a drop shadow and essentially just goof around with this until you like the way it looks. Remember though, don't make it too drastic or crazy. You want to have it help the picture, not make it worse. Now something else I did with this particular piece is I used a stroke around the outside. Okay, and right now it looks pretty horrible, but what I want to do is remove the fill opacity. So what that does is it makes it look like this, so the opacity of the main effects is still good. Okay, we want to keep that up, but we reduce the fill. So the fill, again, is the inside of the letters. So you can change how much of that you want to work with. Okay, and we can apply that to the rest of the pieces as well. Now here I've stressed out my letter for my subtitle, and I can actually take and copy effects from one layer to another. So if I copy layer style, that's a right click, and right click again, and paste layer style. Now I didn't really want all that. There's some that I don't want. So what I don't want is I don't want the fill to be hidden, and I don't want the stroke around the outside. So I can drag that one down to the garbage. But that was a little quicker to get what is after. I can open up the drop shadow, and I can adjust it, maybe not so far on the distance, and my goal is to make it look like it fits in and it's very stylish. Finally I'll apply it to this last piece here, and I'm going to use the same technique of choosing the layer, clicking on the layer mask button, and adding the brush to stress out the look a little bit. And I just want to look like it's been through the wash with too much bleach. And again I'm going to use filter, sharpen, smart sharpen, and I can move this around to see what it's doing, with, without, click OK, and I can apply some other layer effects to this piece as well. So if I want to choose, for example, a drop shadow or a outer glow to it, I can affect the size of it, and there's a lot of things you can pick from, and the trick is goof around with it until you like what you see. Find out what it does. I don't know what all these things do, but I usually find out on the way.